like old.
Well, here's I was watching something. Okay, so it's recording. So here's again, I'm trying to play with kind of an old dog learning new things, and I saw this guy do something where to hype the podcast, like the way he used Opus clips, was he would take the what we're doing, throw out set questions, let the conversation organically gestate, and then when he feels he's got enough cool stuff, he'll say, okay, cool, cut. And then as he's watching it, he's like, you know what the best title for that segment? He comes up with the title of the segment after watching the discussion. And then he uses the Opus clip to pull it up. Yeah. And then he uses that as the intro segments.
So like, Opus has, so you can change the title in Opus. It could be like interesting, catchy, like different like things. And the titles are based on what will rank SEO.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. So so with the other podcast, I was going to do that for a few minutes.
Let's do it.
Well, here's the other thing I wanted to do was kind of like a kind of a tit for tat thing where we talk, like, let's pick and I have some ideas, some like confusing topics in fitness that, and I would talk about how I would approach it. And then you would talk about how you would approach it. And I think what we would also get from that is tidbits for coaches, like, oh, that's how that coach approaches it, but also tidbits for clients, like, because you and I are always kind of throwing out little hooks of like, hey, if you really want to try this, try a little bit of water, but make sure it's room temperature. Hey, try this every morning. Tell me what right? Like that always just gestates through our conversations. Yeah. So I figured whichever one. So, which one? So if you feel the old school one wouldn't be too interesting, I think it'd be kind of funny.
Let's do it.
All right. I actually, or I can save it for next time, because what I couldn't get, because I had to pull it off Facebook, was I was going to do a couple like some what do they call that when word association?
Okay.
Well, I was going to show you some pictures that I dug up of the old accounts we worked on. And then when that's in your head, then hit you with some questions from the FI seminar. see what your recall is. Yeah. Or if you're like, oh my God, did I write that? That was so wrong. Take that out. Remember, right? Like how many? So that's the interesting thing I try to get through to one coach one day was, you go through almost every 3 to 5 year cycle if you're really studying, where you're like, man, what was I doing? Yeah. What was I doing a couple years ago? But all right, so let's start with let's do a couple. I don't know what I want to start with. I really think the old school slides would be kind of interesting.
Let's do it.
All right. So let's go and present slides, biometrics. Oh, you know what? I got a good idea. How do you start? I was going to do this. How do you start with your program design for a client? Like, very generally speaking, what are the components you're looking to put together? And I'll tell you why. Like, if you remember, can you see this?
Yep.
Right. So do you remember this slide we used to do?
Yeah. You can live without food for 3 weeks, or 3 weeks. Water, you can only do 4 days. Oxygen after a couple of minutes.
And then do you remember? And then you remember what the importance
of it.
Yeah. So like,
breathing, right?
Yeah. So what was it? So we said was okay. And then we kind of like stumped the audience with the, okay, so how long can you live without moving? We were like, what? It's like, right. You get everybody's confused. You're like, well, my 300-pound life, they don't even move for like years at a time. They don't die. So why, if your primary goal is health, you want to look good, you want a 6-pack, you want to do, but those are like, I always remember we say, like, those are all these things we can get to as a byproduct of doing things the healthy way, inside out. So if our famous film is health, like, what is the most important parameter to your life and your health? Oxygen, then water, then food. What's the least important? Movement. So what's the first thing your trainer started you with? Movement. And then we would have a breathing test, a diaphragmatic breathing test in our assessment, right? So my question is now, probably a decade later, where are you generally speaking when you put a program design for somebody? And then we added in here actually the component of think. And this was kind of, now I remember, this was our answer to a more layman's term representation. Remember Check's totem pole?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. And the thing about Check always was, and you said it last time, was he's just deep. you might not be ready for him. Like, and if you're not ready for him, you're going to discount some amazing shit that he can show you. Mm-hmm. So this was kind of our version of the totem pole to show clients like, hey, you know, without being mean to your trainer or to your training program or to your online step class or to your, you know, whatever, what's the most important thing to your existence? Yeah. Right. So then then we added in the think component, because we started realizing, I think it was after BioSig, how much the thinking affected hormone release. Yeah. And then that became what we called our 6 controllables, to argue the illusion and holistic, not the illusion, but the philosophy and holistic fitness that controls an illusion. Yeah. Right. So where are you now? Like, are you looking at breathing techniques? Are you doing, you know, are you pulling in NKT and doing muscle tissue? So what are the generic high level stuff you're looking at right from the beginning and you're putting in a program?
So most people that come to me have like rehab issues. They want to like rehab or whatever like that. I have a few people that come to me for weight loss. So when I work with them, I know I go through like
few people come to you for weight loss.
Yeah, because I don't really take on too many weight loss to me anymore, because it's like boring, you know, kind of. Unless somebody's like really like interested in like, or like really like, I need to do this, I'm all motivated, I'm all aboard, help me out, blah, 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 then I'm okay. But some people are like, oh, I just want to lose like, you know, 10, 15 pounds. And, you know, I'm like, all right, you plan on, what other things beside exercise you plan on, you know, working on your life? Well, you know, I like, my nutrition's good. I don't really want to change it. I know what I'm doing. I'm like, all right, you're just gonna be a pain in the ass, you know?
That's my favorite thing is when you say to them, hey, John, can I have some help? Sure. Well, how's your diet? Oh, my diet's good. I'm eating really healthy. I'm like,
yeah. So like, for example, like a few months ago, I had somebody that comes in and they had back issues. So first thing I know, and I mean, I can just tell, I've been doing this for so long. Like, you know, after taking NKT and like all these postural assessments, you just watch people like in the grocery store, how they're walking and their feet, and like, all right, you're like, and you can see kind of what's going on with their body. Yep. So, you know, and this person came in right now or came in and she's like, oh, it's like my back's been bothering me. I'm going in and out of doctors and everything like that, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, all right, you know, I got the basic questions, and I put her on the table. And I was like, well, she's like, what do you think it is? I was like, well, I know what it is, but I'm not going to. I was like, first of all, your core is not working. And she's like, and she lifted up her shirt and she had definition in her core. Yeah. She was lean. She was a runner. So she's like, I was like, yeah, you have the framework, but you don't have the foundation. I was like, and I kind of do like the bridge and the guide wire analogy, like all the muscles that you can see in the mirror, those are like the muscles that are like the framework for the bridge. The other 97% of muscles in your body, like the stabilizer muscles, those like the guide wires that kind of hold the bridge in place. Your guide wires are non-existent. And he's like, well, I'm like, look at my core, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm going to show you something. So she gets on the table. Remember the TVA activation one? And right away, boom, she came flying up, and, you know, and nothing was working. I was like, dude, nothing's working. So she's like, well, where do you think it's coming from? And I'm like,
pause for one quick second, because I'm trying to get back to like what you remind me of is breaking some things down simplistically to people so we don't lose them. So when we do, I don't think a lot of coaches still aren't aware of muscle testing and the basic biology behind muscle testing, muscle locking is it's neurological. There's like electrical impulses, so to speak, that go through certain systems of the body. And there was a great analogy. I don't know who I'm stealing it from, but they were like, if you think of your fiber optic cable, so let's not argue about why it's junked up, how it got junked up. It's just junked up. And if that wire is junked up, the signaling's not there. If the signaling's not there, you're not going to get the performance, no matter how good it looks. Sure. Right. So like when you say it doesn't work, can just very simply give a better explanation than me on when you say it doesn't work. Neurologically speaking, it doesn't, you know, you don't get the muscle lock. Or you don't get
when I explain it to the clients, I'm like, you have something called like motor amnesia. And it's called neurokinetic therapy. So your brain forgot how to make the connection to your core. It's not working. There's something in the middle that's cutting off it. So motor movement, amnesia, meaning I forgot. So motor amnesia with that muscle. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to release a muscle, then you activate a muscle, and then you have to walk it out. And so, for example, I'll kind of take you through it. So you can do like a transverse abdominis muscle testing where they lie on their back, the table's up in a tabletop position, knees are in front of the hips a little bit, and you push down just a little bit of weight. You're just telling, like, I just tell people, hey, just meet my pressure, and I push down maybe like 5 or 10 pounds, and you can tell a lot of things. So for like her, right away, first thing she did, she lifted her head up. Right away, I know it's coming from her suboccipital muscles. So her suboccipital muscles, the muscles right below the occiput bone, those are, I see this in like 99% of people. And I should say, but some of it's coming from the QL sometimes, but most of it's coming from the neck. So every time she goes and tries to engage her TVA, like she tries to take a step, those muscles just kind of tighten up on her. So what I did is I was like, all right, so let's try this now. I want you to lay on the table. I want you to lift your chin all the way up. That relaxes the muscles back here. And then I push down on her leg and she can't move. She's like, oh my God, like what's going on here, right? And then I work on her neck a little bit. Then I test her in the clear. Then I have her walk it out. So the most important thing is having the person walk it out, maybe like, 50 to 100 steps, because you're trying to set a new motor engram in there.
What do you mean? What, like literally walk?
Yeah, like I want you to walk down the 200 feet and come back, or whatever it is.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yeah, because you're trying to reprogram. You're trying to create a new motor engram.
So bear with me. So I thought to do the reprogramming of the motor engram is you have to move it through that movement, right? Like, so like once you release the muscle, you engage the other muscle. Instead of walking out, you would continue to do repetitions to stimulate the muscle that was shut off.
Yeah, it depends on the part. Like if I'm healing a rotator cuff, I don't have them walk it out, but I'll have them go up and like do stuff like that would normally bother them. But like the core is like every time she's taking a step, she's activating the core.
Gotcha. Okay, so walking it out was would walking it out be both the kind of analogy of like move it out, but for her specifically, because this was a transverse abdominal locking issue, she needed to walk because that was the main. Right.
I'm trying to create a new neural pathway. Or refurbish an old neural pathway that wasn't working. So the best way to kind of describe it in motor engram is pretend like I put a blindfold on you and I give you the keys to your car and I sit you in the car. No problem. You'll be able to start that car up, no problem. But if I put you in my car, you'd be fumbling around. And basically that's what your body's doing, is your brain is trying to make the connection to the core, and it's just like all over the place. So after I release the muscle and then I release the muscle, I strengthen, so I release the suboccipitals, I strengthen the core, I'll do a certain core exercise, and then I'll have them walk it out, come back, and 9 out of 10 times they're like, wow, like I feel a huge difference. The other 1 out of 10 are like, oh yeah, I definitely noticed something different about myself. Then the reason I always start off with the TVA exercise is because I don't really, I already know, like I'm just doing this so long, I can just watch somebody walk through and I'll tell them what's causing what's dysfunctional. It's not that I'm just smarter than people. I just like have more experience. So I understand. I know where everything is coming from. So one of the things I'm looking for right off the bat is that she's a chest breather. Everybody's a chest breather. Like 9,900 and 99,000, whatever. Out of 1 is like maybe like knows how to breathe diaphragmatically, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, all right, listen, I'm going to give you a little bit of an anatomy lesson here, right? You have something called your inner unit muscles. And it's basically I think it's like a brick. You have your bottom, your top, your front, and your back. So the top is your diaphragm, the bottom is your pelvic floor, the front is your TVA, that core muscle, and the back is your multifidus muscles. So all 4 of them, they work on a neurological loop. So what happens is when you're breathing through your chest, right away I know your pelvic floor is not working. And there was a statistic I remember from the Czech seminar, like
over 30% of women.
Yeah.
No, it's more than that. It's like 65 to 70% of women over the age of 30 will pee a little bit when they squat or deadlifts because they can't close their pelvic.
Or they can't run across the street real quick without wetting themselves.
Yeah.
The pelvic floor line.
Oh God, I want to interrupt you so many times. Yeah. Do you remember when we first learned that stat? And it was as if, and I don't know about you, but I remember when we first learned that, I would start saying that in every presentation with every female that was above 30, and every one of them would do this. And it wasn't surprised. It was, that's happened to me.
Yeah.
It changed the whole dynamic of my ability to sell a client. Yeah. But anyway, but go ahead. So
if your breathing is, if you're a chest breather, I know your pelvic floor is not working. I know you have no spinal stabilization back there with the multifidus muscles, because if you look on the back of a vertebrae, the multifidus muscles connect in the transverse process into the spinous process, and they hold it together nice and tight. So that's not working. Your diaphragm isn't working, just dormant, just sitting there. So every time, the main purpose of your diaphragm is to lift the rib cage up and down. So if that's not happening, You're now using all your neck muscles to lift yourself up and down, all your chest muscles, all the other respiratory muscles or muscles that become respiratory muscles.
Now, hold on. When you say because of this, I know that, are you drawing from an amalgam of different anatomy that you're putting together, or are you drawing from one school of thought? Because I know a lot of this, and I want to give credit because I really, I think the world of David Weinstock and NKT. So I know a lot of that comes from David. And I think the Czech Institute, where we had that pelvic floor issue, where are you drawing this neurology of, okay, I know that this goes through this and this goes through this. Are you still talking Weinstock, or is this your education?
No, that's from Paul Czech from Scientific Core Training.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's where I got it from, the Scientific Core Training.
I really need to do Sorry, I did. I just had a moment. Like, man, I it's amazing how much I've forgotten when I'm so appreciative of this. But yeah, go ahead, because I got a couple of things I want to stop you on and ask.
So I tell them, I'm like, listen, so every time you're breathing, you're just causing you're causing a lot of dysfunction in your body. So
every day, all the time.
I can give you the best program in the world, but if you're not going to take time out and learn how to breathe properly, like I'll teach them how to diaphragmatically breathe while I'm there. He's like, you need to practice this. And once you get good at it, you're going to see a big difference in your back. And it's not this, and you got to understand, you just don't heal. When you heal, you don't heal one part of your body. You heal the whole part. So the more oxygen, because I tell people, you're going to get 1/3. And it's like another thing too, is like, if you're coming here for aesthetic looks, which I know you are, no one comes just for back pain. Everyone wants to look a little better. You got to understand, when you become when you become a chest breather, what you're doing is you get 1/3 of the oxygen in your body. When you get 1/3 of the oxygen in your body literally thinks it's hyperventilating. When it's hyperventilating, your pH levels drop, your acidity levels go high. Very hard to build muscle, very hard to burn fat. So once you start getting more oxygen in your body, your sight will get better because you get more oxygen to the microcapillaries in your eye. Your hair will get better. Your skin will get better. Your organs will get better. You're going to be less. You're going to detox.
Very systemic.
Yeah. So it's not like you just heal in one spot in your back. You're going to feel it in your back. It's going to get it better. But your whole body is going to go through a healing process just doing this. I mean, you think about it, like you breathe 18 to 22,000 times a day, whatever that number is. Like, if you're shallow breathing that much, you're just setting yourself up for disaster. And there's a lot of research out there that says diseases can't live in oxygen-rich environments, so you're preventing diseases in the future. So
I think the there's a couple things I want to pull out. One, I think we could do a multitude of episodes on, because what I wanted to ask you, and we go down a rabbit hole of compliance. Like, right, Charles Poliquin's great quote was, "Compliance is king," right? And Paul Czech's continuously always says things like, "The best workout exercise program is the one you'll do," right? Like, there's always this higher level of coaching that we get to the point where we're like, listen, it doesn't matter how great the program is that we write. It doesn't matter all the knowledge we have in here. Like, if you're not centered here to do it, right? So there's always been, I think, and like, again, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I'll say it now so I remember it when I watch it later, which is, I think there's a lot of work we could do as coaches and helping younger coaches on the idea of compliance. Like, where does our responsibility fall from, hey, I got to go out there to help people and I want to help people, versus meet people where they're at. And some people you meet where they're at and they'll leave, right? There's this whole discernment system, because I know it's happened to you. And I know it's definitely happened to me, where you just care and you get too involved in your clients and they're draining you, right? Because you're taking on their stuff. And I think it happens to a lot of coaches when they first get into the holistic side of things, because this holistic coaching really starts to open a lot more of empathy. It's not just about this David Goggins-esque yell at you and run all day. And it's not soft as this ultra wokey safe space, right? Like, doing good work on yourself holistically is tough, and it's dark and it's brutal, but it's also right. So you can go down a whole thing, like where's your responsibility as a coach? But let me go back a little bit to something I did want to mention before we move on from breathing, which is, you mentioned it, how at your level of coaching, and I mean that not to like ego puff you, but to say to younger coaches, like, there's like better places to go in your career, where like you don't have to be sitting there with a whole part queue and, oh my God, I got to get past it, right? There comes a time when you just kind of almost like, it's weird. It's like a Jedi, right? You're like, you don't need to do that.
Yeah, it just flows naturally.
You need to rethink your diet. Yeah. Right. So this was the biggest compliment I really feel like I would get from the system that you and I would do from FIA, which is, you said, he said, when I see people walking, I just know where the issues are going to be. And I would always remember saying that people would come out of our seminars, especially after that introduction one, and they would say, I can't ever look at people the same. They just look like either problems or dollar signs. Like if I go to the mall, I see somebody with hips that aren't straight or shoulders, and I'm like, oh God, that must be they must have crazy shoulder pain, right? And
they're different.
Yeah, that's almost, we tell them, and later on I would explain it as we're gonna have you put on the Tony Stark Iron Man helmet.
Yeah.
Or what I would put is the Predator lens. And you can like zero in and, oh, there's all the crunchy stuff. I know there's gonna be a bunch of crunchy stuff here and pressure it. And, oh my God, that hurts. And you make them feel the pain. And then the beautiful thing with NKT is, you and I both know you have to walk it out and you have to rebuild the programming of it, but you can get people these immediate benefits right away that a lot of other methodologies don't have, right? Like the hardest thing in our business as a coach is selling what's called future benefits.
Yeah.
If you do all the stuff I tell you to do, in the future, you're going to feel better, right? That's the same difficulty in laden financial services sales. If you give me all your money now, and I'm not going to guarantee you, and you really don't know shit about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But maybe in 10 years, you'll be right. Like it's a really hard sell to do. So I always thought NKT was amazing. I think David Weinstock's amazing. I really not understood how that modality hasn't blown up more. And David's super humble, and I don't think he pushes it from the marketing.
It's grown. It's really big, but
he's gotten been overseas. Like I still follow him on Instagram. I feel like Singapore, like he's always overseas.
But you know what it is, like those who are listening out there, if you want to expand your business, get into the rehab. And I'm not talking, NASM, certification, correction certification. It's a good foundation.
It's a good foundation.
You're not going to fix people like immediately. Like NKT, like that's like, man, you can have people that are like 20 years in pain come to you in a matter of like 10 minutes, like they can be out of pain.
Let me give you a commercial for NKT. April, I don't consider myself really like an NKT practitioner. I love it, but I fell off so much of so many of the disciplines I studied because I took such a huge break from coaching, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say I maintain 15 to 20% of that level one, right? Went to a retreat I was telling you about in April. Bunch of roofers, messed up back, messed up knees, complaining 10 years, 15 years. Fucking 5 to 7 minutes on my foam roller, because when I'd go to the meetings where it was a retreat, so like every so often we'd have a meeting and I would just bring my foam roller and foam roll in between because of all the traveling and stuff, and everybody would be like, what is that? What is that? And there's a few jujitsu guys and they're like, oh, I kind of know what that is, but they didn't know how to use it right.
Yeah.
So with my 15% knowledge, I blew everybody away and was having people stand up like, what the hell was that? I'm able to move my shoulder without pain. And they're like, and in my head, I'm like, okay, I can't remember the rehab exercises. So that's going to stay. So that's going to really fucking hurt tomorrow morning. Like, you feeling great today. Right. But my big commercial for NKT is everything in the world, Alex Hormozi, Gary V, Gary Brecka. I'm trying to think of anybody who's hot on social media. Everything in the world is about that tells you how to sell is all about pain. Yeah. How do you find someone's pain and make them view and value that you have the answer to relieve the pain?
Yeah. People pay a lot of money to get out of pain.
So much more. And I can't agree with you more, not only the rehab, but right, like,
and you're opening a window to your business that no one else knows how to do. Like NKT is really big in the physical therapy world. I wouldn't say really big, but it's like that's where it's mostly in. You get a lot of physical therapists in there and a couple of trainers. But if you're a trainer in a gym or you do online training, I mean, online training is tough to do with NKT, but if you can get somebody, it's it'll bring you a different clientele. Now, so not only are you getting people that have like weight loss issues and come to you, now you're going to have weight loss and rehab, and everybody at some point in their life, everybody has dysfunction in their body. It's only a matter of time. We're all ticking time bombs. It's only a matter of time before something comes to the surface and you're in pain. And if you have that like knowledge and that expertise, and you have that, what's the word I'm looking for, where you're well known in that area for doing that, people are going to flock to you. People are going to come.
Let me give the opposite of that, because what you're saying, not only do I 100% agree with, but is the like almost the samurai approach of spending the time building your reputation, right? I would argue, and not argue, I would add on an additional bullet point of the value of NKT, because you know this. When you're young and you're new, how much time do you really have to capture and that person's attention span to get them to spend $2,400 with you when you're right? And you have that, you really don't have an hour. You know how every gym does the 1 hour evaluation session? You don't. Yeah. You're the first 5 minutes. You and I know this. You have the first 5 minutes to really make that strong connection with somebody. You know, that we talked the different ways we looked at the 5 whys. You find they're inhibitive to the connection. I find them allows me to access that connection in those first few minutes, right? Yeah. NKT allows you not to be salesy and not to be chunky or clunky or psychological. It's just, you can literally alleviate someone's pain in the first 5 minutes of meeting them by watching them walk up. Oh shit, I know where there's going to be pain in the calf and the IT band because the external rotate, right? That's my favorite one. Easiest one. You don't even need to know why. Just know if the ankle goes out, hit that IT band up. Then once they buy from you, this is from Sir Richard Branson, you might not know how to fix it, but if they pay you, now you study the whole weekend on iliotibial bands, and maybe you'll stumble upon a guy named Guy Voyer, and maybe you'll stumble upon some soft tissue and some break. But what NKT allows you to do is instantaneously in the first 90 seconds to 1 minute to 5 minutes, pretty much almost, I feel, get you like 80% to closing a deal, like a client.
And there's been the way I used to do this, like when I would be booked like 35, 40 sessions a week at my peak. Then I just kind of stopped, and I got down to like 20, 25. It's exhausting. Yeah. So what I would, in the beginning, I was just trying to make as much money as I possibly could. So anytime I would have, like say 3 or 4 clients, they would fall off or whatever like that, I would have an open block on say a Saturday, and I would send an email out to I would have the club send an email out to people. I have 4 open slots, and then anybody with any kind of pain. So they would come in and I would be like, all right, it's like, what's going on with you? You have any limitations? Oh yeah, like my shoulder bothered me. And instead of doing the Park U, what I do is because I'd only have like a half hour with them, because I try to book them back to back, and I put them on the table. I'd be like, hey, do you mind if I just show you, try a couple things? Yeah, no problem. Put them on the table, 2 or 3 minutes of doing some stuff. I'm like, all right, move your shoulder like I was hurt before. And they're like, yeah, no pain. What's going on? I was like, how'd you do that? Oh, we'll get into that a little bit later. I just want to trying to figure something else out. Then at the end, I would be like, all right, kind of see what I did there. We need to kind of build a program based around that. It's only going to stay in that. In reality, it's only going to stay there for about maybe like 2 or 3 days before the pain starts coming back again, because they didn't do anything to strengthen it. And like literally, like I'm talking 3 out of 4 would buy.
Let me back up, because I think what you're doing is awesome, and I think it's a huge note for new trainers, because one of the things,
don't give too much information. Don't.
Yeah, right. Brian, now that I'm trying to get back more into coaching.
Yeah.
What? What'd you say?
Everyone wants to sound really smart and give so much information up front, and then you just devalue yourself. You think you're creating value, but you're giving the whole playbook away.
And I think so. What I hear you saying rings to me in the, what do they call that? Is it like it's called something like the too many option paradox, where when you give someone all this knowledge, you talk yourself out of the sale, because it's not so much even that they think, oh, I can do all this. They're like, oh, wow, this is too overwhelming for me. Yeah. Like, I believe you're great, but think about it. When a person goes to a doctor for a major surgery, they're not asking about every tell me how you're going to make the incision and what you call the epidural layer and where you're going to stem the thing. Like, no. I just want to know you're the best and you're going to take care of me. I'm going to be okay. Right. Yeah. And what happens, but what I think, what you did though is a psychological term that we used to use called the takeaway. That's where I feel the yes path. That's the true root of the yes path initiation. You're saying, hey, listen, right? Like, oh, wow, do you have the pain? No, I don't have the pain. But it's really a positive, even though they're saying no, it's a positive. It's an affirmation, right? And then you're saying, oh, well, how did you do that? We'll get to that later. Yeah. Now you're creating the clip. I'm sorry, called cliffhanger. Now you create the cliffhanger. We'll get that later. Now they've got to pay attention the rest of the fucking session to you because they want to know what the hell you did in the beginning to get rid of the pain. Better than any part cube, better than any stupid psychological trick you're going to use. It is felt by the client. There's no fucking pain. But the thing that I think is really good young trainers should take from you on this is the idea of open blocks. So I started to work with one or two young trainers that just getting certified, and I'm trying to like brush up on my skills as a coach to tell them what would I do if I was in your position. They're in your typical commercial gym, so forth. And I love the idea of like, well, I just can't. I was like, I think that if you're a young trainer, within a few weeks, you could look at something like a TVA test, right? Yeah. It's pretty easy to find. What's the other the test where we do with the leg? The QL test. There's a couple tests, and maybe we'll mention them at the end, but just say the TVA test Brian mentioned earlier. Learn how to do it. Learn what it means. And then if you were to open up simple blocks on a day like that and just made it very specific, anyone having pain, everyone having trouble with their diet, and then what you said during that block was different and you would immediately solve a problem. Yeah. You're going to start building what Brian's talking about is this mystique around you that becomes your reputation, because what's going to happen is that person's going to go and do something and their shoulder's not going to hurt. Someone's going to say, oh shit, your shoulder doesn't hurt. Yeah, this guy Brian's like a fucking wizard. I don't know what he does, but he just like, he does these incantations and he burns sage. And the next thing you know, I lost it, right? Like you become this wizard in a way of people are like, you got to go see this guy. But in the beginning, I think when you don't have that and you're building it up, opening up blocks of time to do that is really smart business. Giving cliffhangers. Like, remember we used to tell people like, I will never forget. You did. So this is really a funny story. I don't know if you know this. We had just got doing NKT. I didn't grasp NKT as well as you did because of my extracurricular activities during the seminar, which although you joined me, you then studied much harder and longer after, but story for another podcast. Yeah. But again, like, so we're in Gold's Gym, we're in Florida, and I can't remember who it was, but somebody's client was having an issue. And that was something really great about our PT management system, is that we really constructed a system where the manager would constantly walk around the floor helping trainers in the middle of sessions, which was like you, right? So we made it really cool that a trainer could say, hey, Brian, my client's having pain in their knee. Could you look at it? And it'd be right in a session. You could walk right over. And that's how we started working. And I remember this happened. You did something with somebody in their ankle and you worked out their calf. And then they went back, they had better range of motion. They were able to do the squat. They're like, oh my God. And then you would say to them, hey, so-and-so, see me afterwards. I'll show you how to put that into the program. So we created this, even this what I used to call the synergistic knowledge value of like, you're not just hiring one trainer on staff. Yeah. You're hiring 15 trainers plus the bosses because we're all like a team. Yeah. Okay. So then you work with the trainer, you tell them how to do it. All right. So I think it's like the fucking next day I'm walking through and I'll never forget. I think it was this guy, Ryan, who did all the kettlebells and the functional movement screening. And he's like,
the Thing Kid, right?
The Thing Kid. Yeah. And he goes,
I forgot what his name was. Yeah.
Ryan was his first name. I can never remember his second name. He was really good friends with Rich Cleary, who was a really good guy. Remember Rich, really good guy. And he got a job in like Colorado being a head of something. I forget. But anyway, yeah. And anyway, everyone kind of sees you do that, right? So I'm coming through and they're like, hey, John, my client's got some pain in their leg. I'm like, oh, fuck. I don't remember what this, I can't remember on the spot. So I was like, so I did my thing where I was like, okay, well, stand this way. Stand that way. All right, let me see. So I just start fucking digging into any knot, like, right? Like, it was in the same spot you did. I'm like, all right, try that out. So they move. They're like, oh my God, it works so much better. I'm like, yeah, see, don't worry about that, Ryan. I'll show you how to do that later. I walk away. I'm like, Ryan's like, hey, can you show me to do that? I'm like, absolutely not. I really don't know what I did. I just totally mimicked what Brian did. You got to go see him. And they're all like, him, Rich, they were like, did he really just? I was like, yeah, I don't know what I did.
I had no idea what I did. I was just pushing people. It hurt.
I just mimicked Brian, what he did. But although a little bit of a nincompoop way to do it, it kind of speaks volumes to how powerful NKT can be. That, I'm not saying that you shouldn't study it. You should do the seminar, pay attention. But it's something that has like that instantaneous, if not long-term effect. And I try to explain to people, like, if you're going to a chiropractor and you're not doing some type of deep tissue work, all you're doing is like, because all the let's say this, everything's coming disjointed in the spine, right? Well, why?
Yeah.
What's pulling on it, right? Because I go back to your theory, which I'll probably ask you to repeat of the abdominal wall, right? In the support beams. Mm-hmm. Like what's causing the spine to pop out?
Yeah.
It's typically getting force pulls from different directions and the pressure coming down. So if you don't correct what's pulling inappropriately, it's just going to keep sliding out or slide really hard out one time and you're going to have a problem. And you're right. So it's like, so I think that whether you're doing yoga, you're doing physical therapy, you're doing chiropractic care, I think it's a mistake not to work NKT and soft tissue into your programming. But
I want to share a story. If you got like 2 or 3 minutes,
go ahead. Yeah, because I want to find this one.
I'm having this guy on our podcast in October.
Remind me, I reached out to Luke offline. Please don't let me forget. I forgot for 3 days.
Okay, cool. So I had this guy who's coming on my podcast in October, and I found this guy. Basically his story is he was an MIT neuro brain surgeon, a neurologist, did brain surgery.
He had
the terminology. He was a neurologist.
Neuroscientist?
Neurosurgeon. I'm sorry.
Neurosurgeon.
So, and I don't know if you know too much about the field, but in neurosurgery, you obviously work on the brain. But when you have that neurosurgery as a doctor, when you're a doctor of neurosurgery, you don't, probably about maybe like 15% of the time you're working on the brain. Most of the time you're working on the spinal column. So MIT, MIT, top of his class. And he does the Hippocratic Oath and all that other stuff. And one of his doctors, one of the professors is like, your main job as a doctor is to relieve suffering. So that's what he was talking about. Like, okay, that's your main job, is to relieve suffering. So he was like, man, I was doing like, 100 or 150, back surgeries and every day. I mean, I'm sorry, every year. And he's like, it was crazy because like a third of them would get better. A third of them would stay the same, and a third of them would actually feel worse when they get out of it. And the third that actually got better within 6 to 12 months, about 95% of those people, they would be back in pain again. And it was just like, so like, I donated like, dedicated 20 years of my life to doing this, and I can't help people. And he's like, so I started like, and it was starting to come like a common theme where people would come in, and I have an appointment set up, say 3 months out, and they'd be like a week or two before the appointment, they'd be like, hey doc, my back pain's away. Do I really need to do this? Then he started asking more questions like, what have you been doing? He goes, I quit my job, so I'm not as stressed out anymore. I've been drinking a lot of water. I've been getting to sleep on time. I switched to a vegan. And the guy's like, listen, I'm not a vegan person. I eat meat all the time. Probably most people are eating, processed red meat and shit like that, which causes inflammation. So they're eating, I'm eating more vegetables and fruits. And I just feel better. I've been moving around. I've been walking. So he's like, real foundation to fix people: better sleep, foods, less stress, eating clean. And he's like, but the doctors, you can't do that because your job is to book as many surgeries as you possibly can. So he became really depressed, and he wound up quitting, and now he lives like in the fucking mountains. He just like doesn't do anything. Just has a YouTube channel and kind of lives in the mountains.
So this is the guy that's going to be on your podcast?
Yeah. So
what's his? So yeah, like let's give him the tag. What's his name? What's his YouTube? When you have him?
Yeah, it's like Dr. Goody, but I'll kind of go off a little bit. So anyway, you
having him in October? October, you're having him?
Yeah, I'm having him in October. So one of the things he was saying was like, he's like the medical, it's just like so messed up. We're not here to fix you. You're not here to fix you. It's like, think about it this way. He's like, if you have a hotel, you buy a hotel from somebody, and your occupancy rate is say 85%, what's your goal for next year? I'm like, I don't know, maybe like 90%. He goes, exactly. Hotels work the same as hospitals. Their job is to fill as many beds as they possibly can. So not that the doctors are doing anything cynical to keep you there. They're just a product of the education. They're not fixing the root cause of the problem. So the more beds that are filled, the more money the hospital's making. They can expand, they can grow, and all this other stuff. So it was just interesting. So the point of the story is NKT, like, you'll fix people, you'll help people, but if they're not eating clean. They're not a good mental clarity. They're not stressed out. They're, sleep, quality foods, water, everything like that. You're just gonna run around in circles, and you're never gonna get to the root cause of your client's issues. And
well, I was going to say, I'd go a step further. Like, I don't care who you are, what you're working with, in any type of dimension of like health or repair.
Yeah.
If you're not focused on those factors, you are going to always kind of like keep chasing your tail and repeat things or damage things to make something like, right. Like I don't care what it is. If you're not going to those foundational elements of the way the human body acts, right, then you're never looking at recovery. So here's something, and this might be something to hold for another time, but when we talk a lot about, the healthcare industry isn't there to make people healthier. They're there to book beds and make money. It's like, yes. And I'm okay with that because here's why. I've asked the question, should making people healthier long-term really be the goal of the healthcare industry, when many of the factors that we now know are at the root of true health are non-medicinal? They're things that none of these industries can help us with. They're things that even they're never going to make a doctor with a drug and a surgery that's going to mimic someone going home and learning how to cook and drink good water and learn how to meditate. Right. So when we have things like, well, the healthcare business is there to book rooms and to do that. It's like, yeah, because if they don't, there won't be an industry because it's our fault as the large population as a whole, that the things that make us healthy are not anything the healthcare industry can do.
Yeah.
Right. Like, well, they could work on making better water. Yeah. Well, if they do that, all of the beds they're not booking, they dry out, and all the money they have power to leverage to make better water now dissipates. So it's a vicious circle. Almost any economic thing is a vicious circle. That's why in all economies, breakthroughs are the things that change. And we haven't seen most breakthroughs are technological. So like, oddly enough, in the world of health, the breakthrough is a reverse, right? The breakthrough in true health is going backwards. Yeah. It's right. Less technology, less stress, getting back to like breathing techniques. We'll do so I was listening. It's funny. I was listening to the book by Alex Hermosi because somebody had mentioned it to me from a different industry, but it's interesting because this is the guy behind Gym Launch. So he uses a lot of health and fitness examples. So I'm like, okay, it makes sense, but it's sales oriented. He says in the beginning, he's like, this is to make money. He talks about the fact that if you compare Xanax to meditation, there's no doubt that meditation is better for you than Xanax. But if you look at these four factors, because of human psychology, Xanax wins every goddamn time because people don't, because the barrier
responsibility for themselves.
Exactly. So when we look at the healthcare system, it's like when we say, well, the healthcare system, well, yeah, if we're expecting the healthcare system there's no economy in teaching us all the things that we do, because here's the revolution. Everybody wakes up and starts drinking good water and starts eating good foods, right? Like everything would take care of itself. So all those industries would collapse, because if you just simply stop watching TV, you take out 90% of the fucking in your face, I got to eat this dopamine hits, right? You and I would agree that, I heard this on your podcast a little bit ago when you're talking about foods, about the electrical impulses and people watching screens all the day. And it's a neurodisruptor in a way. And that starts disrupting neurology, disrupts hormone releases, disrupts the hunger cycle, whether you're pushing more cortisol, whether you want more insulin, right? So all these bad cascading effects start happening. Well, you start cutting out something where you're like, well, there's no TV.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because a lot of these, like the foods, you can ask a lot of doctors. I believe I might be a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, but usually I feel like there's some truth behind it. Our foods are basically poison. Like you take our food supply and there's about 40 countries out there that would consider it poison. It wouldn't be allowed in their countries. So when you put all that shit in your body, your IQ drops. You become dumber. Now you couple that with watching fear-based news channels. And the reason that is when you become dumber, you become more acceptable to programming. And now
I got a stat you're gonna love. Keep going. Keep giving.
When your IQ is lower, you have a more chance of getting programmed. So people eat, Burger King all day and just like McDonald's, whatever, fast food, and they just sit on the couch, and all of a sudden, these politicians are getting up there or, you know, pushing this drug every 2 seconds on a commercial. And you got to understand too, it's like, it's very strategic. Like, good for them. You know, they're making a lot of money, but the goal is for, you know, reason we have these podcasts, they're trying to educate the public. Like, you're getting programmed. And it's funny, like, if you look at like USA and New Zealand are the only two countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical companies to do advertising on TV. Everywhere, no one else. You go to Europe, you go to South America, you will not see a pharmaceutical advertisement on TV, because the goal here is just to program you, to keep you sick, to keep you scared. And it's
well, here's something that's more depressing to add to your stat, because I'm not surprised by your stat, because it makes sense, right? When you put all this junk in your system, you're gonna operate less. Like, that's why I always argue with fighters post weigh-ins. Like, what's the big deal if I have a little pasta? I'm like, listen, I'm not going to argue the science that.
Look up glyphosate and the side effects it has, and then come back to me and argue why you should put it in your body.
Okay, so that's always been a great one. Okay, why don't you tell me why you should? Like, give me the benefits of it. That's always like, I've always loved that, because then it throws on someone like. And
it's not like what people before. I don't want to cut you off, but it's not people. Too many people count calories and macros. They don't count chemicals.
Okay, I have a whole thing I want to do with you on that, because you remember I'm the guy who was always like, calories are stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a big calorie guy. Like, but anyway, what did I want to say about the, with the fighters? I was like, listen, when you're in a game, like a sport where a microsecond, a millisecond, a microinch is a knockout, or a glance off your chin is a championship, is right. Like, why? Like, we know that there is some negative effect of the gluten in the system, whether you're tolerant, sensitive or not. We know there's some negative. Now, I'm not going to argue the science that it might be minute.
Yeah.
But why would you even have that disadvantage in a competitive environment?
Exactly.
Right? So then if we agree to that, what is the competitive disadvantage? It's slowing down the neural signaling. So anytime you're fucking with the brain, you're not getting optimal processing. So I'm very much in alignment with what you just said about the IQ. Here's the depressing stack I want to stack on top of it. And I know you're not political, so you might not have heard this, but I was a fan of Andrew Yang, who was an independent. And Andrew Yang, the reason he was pushing something called universal basic income, which is where if you're an American citizen, basically to work, like, you get a stock certificate of the US and you get $1,000 a month of income. Mm-hmm. Almost like again, I don't want to get deep into it, because there's pluses, minuses, and it range, but that was his big platform. And here's why. Mm-hmm. Psychologically speaking, like you said, talking to the programming. Now, this is a guy who was a top advisor to entrepreneurship to both Obama and Biden during those years. And then he went and ran. The psychology said that when you have to make a decision between paying one bill or another, like if you're like, damn, it's coming up to the month and I don't have enough for electric, I got to pay this, I got to pay this, I don't know my car payment. You literally will start to, I think it was almost 4 to 8 IQ point drop, and you become more susceptible to, I forget the official term, but it encompasses being less empathetic to other races and other people. So like it proliferates racism and when you are in a financially crunched position and you got to make a decision is what would be like not that big, it replicates throughout. So now add in what you're saying. Like, I don't know what bill I'm going to pay. Then I turn on the fucking TV at the end of my day after I've been stressed, and I hear now there's another disease that if I don't get a shot, we're all going to die.
Yeah.
The compounding, and I try to explain this to a lot of fighters and my clients, is, and this is, again, is a Paul Chek, Eat, Move, Be Healthy book item. There's not just physical stress and the stress your girlfriend gives you.
Yeah.
You know, there's thermal, there's nutritional, there's six physiological stressors that we know of. And some of them you just can't control. If you are a Brazilian that grew up in Brazil and now you're going to move to New York, you have a thermo stress. Like you have a thermo stress that is just always going to be there. Mm-hmm. So if you have all these ratings and that one's always going to be ticked up a little bit, you really got to balance the rest of them out or get them a little bit more optimal to compensate. But
basically what you're saying is anytime your body's in the fight or flight, like, you know, you can go do the saber-toothed tiger analogy. Tiger jumps out.
You become more primal, reptilian brain. You become more like tribal-based.
It's not a good time to, start writing poetry.
Well, it's not, and it's not a good time to, and they talk about this about, hey, how can we always have these disasters within 90 days of an election? Like I've always said this, like, I don't mind anymore that people say voting for the president is a waste of a vote. I say yes, if you're not voting in all your local elections. So people don't know that the judges that oversee, like the judges you go in front of when you get a traffic ticket, you vote on them. Yeah. I can't tell you. I was talking to people about this when I came down to Florida because I had an issue with a judge. I went through all the thing you know about, and what I found out was that judge ran not only unopposed, but not one vote in her favor. It's just that no one showed up. She won by default. Yeah. So when people say to me, "Oh, that judge is this and that judge is that," and the system is broken, like, no, you're broken. It's just like the healthcare system being broken. If you don't want to wake up and drink good water, you don't want to deal with this, you don't want to deal with this, and you want to just take a pill, and you just want to buy this, and you just ignore that, then like that's my whole thing with the vegans. And like, don't tell me you're saving the world. Like, and again, this is a Paul Check quote. Like your vote is in your dollar. Yeah. Like, so if you take the money out of the meat market, the people that are doing it right, which are the small percentage, and you don't support them because you're in this ideological BS, then you're hurting them. Like, abstaining from helping is just like the quote I go by where, the proliferation of evil men, the only thing they need is the non-action of good men. Like, you can't just sit back and be like, all right, not my deal, not my problem, because you then are a part of that. Anyway, I get on that soapbox about that, but it kind of goes back to that. Like, do you want to take the self-ownership of saying, I want to do these healthy things and I want to make these choices. And do I want to put my money where I know that it'll help me and my community? And where do I want to put my vote? Do I go to my board of ed? Like, am I going to complain that the school system sucks? Do you even know who's on your board of ed? Your board of ed in your local elections has more power on you if you're a family and you have children, I should say. Mm-hmm. However, if you're an adult and you're single and you're complaining how the fucking kids that grow up in the neighborhood are such assholes, well, it's because the school system screwed up. Why is the school system screwed up? I don't know. If you're complaining about shitty adults that are in your community, did you ever go to any of those votes?
I agree with you 100%. Like, I don't vote. I never voted in my life because I don't see the value in it.
And you're not a big complainer. You're very much of all the people.
Because I empower myself, man. I don't play the victim role. Like, you think my parents look back from 30 years ago and be like, oh man, my life would have been a lot different if Reagan didn't get into office. No, like, stop being a bitch about it. And like, if something comes up, you deal with it. But I do agree with you on the fact that, like, a lot of people are like, you don't vote, that's so un-American, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I vote two ways. I vote by not voting, and I vote with my wallet to give back more to the community.
So hold on, let me back up on two things you said, which were pretty cool. Yeah. One were interesting was
but kind of give you props is like, I tell people, I'm like, all right, so an American, you don't vote, so you vote. You go, oh yeah, I vote every 4 years. I'm like, well, and I go, it starts on the micro level. Like, who's on your board of ed? Who's the politicians in your town? Oh, I don't know. So yeah, so you vote just like the rest of the sheep out there every 4 years, but you don't do anything before that.
Not even every 4 years. It's probably 90 to 30 days, 90 to 30 days of attention within 4 years.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's worse. It's not like the American public watches for 4 years. Like, this was my big argument, right? I don't care if you're right or left. Yeah. Right. We talked about the same bird analogy. I'm almost like, we deserve everything we get as a population. Well, one, I wanted to say this to you. We are in this culture today where businesses are being like, our whole economic cycle is going to be screwed if Donald Trump is elected president. Our whole rights are going to be abolished if Joe Biden's elected president, right? Like, one, now you are blaming the president, like you just said. We've actually moved to a big society that does that. It's very annoying. So that's one. Two, the idea of what was it? Something about the elected. So you're not a person who gets very extremely bothered by a lot of things. Like, for instance, I can, like, in my, what I call, when I step into the matrix and I'm doing like some marketing jobs, I'm going into businesses that are more like what I call in that matrix and that dynamic. It's like, you hear a lot of, the kids today, they're into the stupid music. Oh, the kid, right? Like, when you see things like that, that's something that we almost joke at. That's every generation's joke, right? I really feel like our generation is this mixed match generation where we really can be around 20-year-olds and relate. And we really can be around 80-year-olds and relate. But the 20-year-olds say can't relate to the 80-year-olds. Like, we're still in this mixed mash. And And what I wanted to say about it was you don't get bothered about, but the people who do get bothered, I agree with you, is I kind of turn around like, well, that's why you need, even if you don't have kids, you need to go to some of these things and be attention. Like, who's the judge? Like, is there a judge just letting everybody off for speeding tickets because they're super lenient? Well, then that's why you have a lot of speeding in your area. Is there, right? Like, if you're not voting for if you don't want to go to the board of ed because you want to get involved in the school, are you voting for judges? If you're not here's what I wanted to get at, because this is what keeps short circuiting my mind. I don't want to lose this question. When you said, I think you didn't say, I'm paraphrasing poorly. You said, I'm either doing my American right or my responsibility. It's because it's a good thing I'm not voting. Please explain that so someone doesn't take it the wrong way. Why do you believe? Because I will say this. I know your personal philosophy is awareness and education. Mm-hmm. So explain a little bit why you say it's a good thing. You are doing your right thing by not voting. That's why I keep tripping up the other point I want to make, because I think that's something that's a good question.
I mean, what is right and wrong? Like, I don't to me, it's like, it's not really like right or good versus bad. It's just my beliefs. Like,
well, no, you said it's good. I'm not. You said I'm doing that's why I don't.
I forgot.
I don't vote.
But I vote in two ways. I vote with my wallet and I vote by not voting.
Yes. Now, why do you feel that's the positive?
Because I think one of the goals is we got to realize our system's broken. So the more people that don't vote, and they kind of look at that, to be like, maybe that's a way they can make a change and be like, all right, hey, listen, this election only, I forgot, like the last election, I want to say it was something like 50% of people didn't vote or something like that. So maybe at the next election, maybe if we get to a point where maybe 80% of people don't vote, they might have to do something about it, or like, and more people. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't have the answer.
I will say this. I will
look at it.
Hold on, let me make this one point, because this is something I would like you to think about, because it's the same analogy I use as vegans saying, well, I'm helping the planet because I don't eat any meat. And I tell, well, if you don't cast a vote, if you don't spend the money on the right meat people, then you're just actually helping the bad guys, because the bad guys, and again, like, there is a definitive right or wrong. We do believe there's one bird fucking flying all the puppetry. That's not right. That's not a good thing for the general goodness of man. Right. Right. So they predicate on the fact that people are like, you know what? I'm just going to back out of this until people realize that I'm holding my breath in the corner and not versus if all those people that didn't vote start voting, and maybe we all voted on the independent circuit. If they kind of have something where 80% of people were voting independent, that would shake up the powers to be, because the powers to be will never be shaken. Like, our broken system doesn't get fixed by not addressing it. That would be my only argument why I stop you on that one, is that if we have a wound, we have an injury, we don't just ignore it and it heals. We have to attend to it. And attention, we have to give attend is attention. We've got to give it the right attention, and we've got to give it educated attention. Like, I feel, and I'm sorry, but to go back on your point, I thought when you said, hey, I vote by not voting, I also felt you were saying, hey, listen, as a person who's very much into education and awareness, I have neither the inclination nor the desire to study politics enough to make an informed decision, because in the reality of it, doesn't matter who's president. I'm going to be happy and I'm going to enjoy my wife and you know what I mean? Like, I think you're self-sufficient a lot more than the general population, that you can do something like that, where it really doesn't matter who the president is to you, because you, Brian, are very rooted in who you are and what you're doing and where you're going and who you're with. That it doesn't matter if it's Reagan, Trump, Biden, whoever, right? Like, you're always going to be you doing you.
Yeah.
But that's where I just wanted to explain it, that I feel that if we don't pay attention to the broken system, it'll not only will continue to break, but whoever's running it broken will be entrenched more. It'll be harder later. But that's my soapbox.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, I don't have the answers to it, but I feel like when people get upset about who's in office, you're not empowering yourself. Like, you're giving all your power to somebody else. And like, I believe in, like, I've studied a lot of, like, quantum physics. I studied a lot of, like, hermeticism and all this other stuff. And I believe like your external environment dictates your internal environment. So instead of, again, if you're angry at something, that's something fear-based. Like, and one of the laws of hermeticism is the law of polarity. So if you're pissed off at something, you don't fight darkness with darkness. It just never works out. you know? So like try to find like the light in it in a way. So it's like, yeah, I mean, you can, but you're never gonna
Hold on, wait, Brian, you froze. Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, but you froze.
You're on when you're on this thing, it doesn't show up frozen when you're going through recording.
Okay, because you were frozen like this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if that's true. Okay, good. So when you're in a fear, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you just got people got to learn how to empower themselves. Like I remember when Trump got in office, and when he first got in office, up front I got fucked because I do a lot of shippings all over the world, and he put tariffs and everything, like in China and all this stuff. I mean, I was spending like probably an extra like $10,000-$15,000 every couple months, you know, shipping my stuff in. You know, I could have been like a little crybaby bitch and be like, oh, Trump, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I became creative, and I did a lot of meditation, and I found ways not only to save that money coming in, but actually work out better deals, which made me more money in the long run. So it's like,
that's the entrepreneur of you.
You got
a lot of people don't have. Like,
I mean, people vote selfishly. People want people in office. Most people want people in office because they don't want to see the world in a better place. They want to benefit themselves. So when something happens, I think people vote very selfishly. I think a lot of people voted Trump in the last 4 elections.
I agree very selfishly. I don't think the majority of the I think what you're talking about, people that are voting because they want to get something out of it that's more of like a materialistic hierarchy, powerful, I think are the smaller. I agree with you on the macro philosophy that they're selfish, but I think the larger population are people that want to do the vote because it feels good. I like look at the way
they want to post their button on Facebook. Oh, today I voted. But like, if people really cared about the environment, in my opinion, again, I don't know too much about politics. I don't really study. Most people should be voting for RFK because he's huge on environment. He's huge on getting rid of glyphosate. He's huge on changing the vaccine laws. He's huge on environmental issues.
So let me ask you a question. Why would you not? I like RFK and what he stands for. I think I don't know if it was you or somebody else I talked to. I wouldn't vote for him because I think he'll get smashed once he gets. There's too much of those puppeteers and there's too much brokenness that he's just. But I do agree with you. I think that. So I'm sorry. This is what I want to ask you. So why would you not? Like, you're a big environment guy. Like, we know about the closed organic cycle. That's Walter Russell. Like, you and I are like, we're like why would you not then say, okay, or maybe I don't want to ask you why not. What's not moving you to step out of your normal comfort zone and engage in voting for someone like Kennedy? Or what would it take?
I remember I was training this guy one time, and I don't want to drop his name, but he worked for the House of Representatives. Okay. And he came up to me and he was like, this is going back about 10 years ago. And he's like, do you vote? I'm like, oh shit, here we go. I'm about to lose a
by the way, for the audience, as a personal trainer, you will meet and hear some of the craziest fucking stories that no one will believe you, because we train all of like all of the craziest people. For some reason, we're the ones they want to dump their stories on. So, so when you hear these crazy stories, 99% of them are probably true.
Yeah. This guy's been in the Congress for about 45 years at this point. And he's like, oh, you vote? And I'm like, I'm thinking,
here we go.
Here we go. Yep. Well, it was nice meeting you. And I'm like, actually, I've never voted in my life. And he goes, why not? He goes, because I don't believe my vote makes a difference. I really don't. And that's just the way I feel. Is, and I think our system's broke. And he looks at me. He's like, you're absolutely right. He's like, if your vote mattered, they wouldn't let you vote. They already know who's going to be in office before the tally. Everything is already set up. And it always took with me. And to play devil's advocate, he could have just been cynical. He could have had a bad idea or a bad day and just kind of like threw that at me. Or he could have been like, I took it as like, just kind of like made me more confident in my decision, why I wasn't voting. So,
See, I agree. I agree to a certain extent. If you're not voting in your local elections, then there's no sense in voting for one guy every 4 years.
I agree.
Right? Like, that's where the system's broken. If we put all that money in advertising into everybody voting in the local elections, like, dude, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but look at how many, and again, this is not to pick left or right, but it's just to pick out hypocrisy. The right gets its hypocrisy picked out a lot in media because there's more liberal-based media outlets. But the left, we're starting to see those cracks in their armor, because I think the holistic community went left early. And then when somebody like Kennedy came out, and do you remember, like, I was a non-Obama guy, and I don't know if you remember this, because we stumbled upon this way back when Obama, because Obama's wife is the first lady that came out, and her mission was like eating healthy.
Obesity.
Yeah. Right. And then all of a sudden,
too, didn't they?
So then all of a sudden it turned into moving. Like it's not about eating, it's about moving, and it's about calories. And there was which is funny because now we know the chef from the Obamas was killed or ended up dead, right? There was a conflict where the chef said, I use only organic, the best fruits and vegetables. And when they directly asked Obama in a statement, he wouldn't use the word organic. And then in the holistic community, there's all those, we have a lot of our tinfoil people in there, but a lot of them are digging up real shit, or there's a little bit of truth in every conspiracy, right? And we found out that one of the law firms that Obama and the Clintons were with, one of their biggest clients was Monsanto.
Yeah.
So it's just, and so, I forgot where we were going on that one, but, so you as a person, so I agree with you. If you're going to just vote every 4 years for one person, it becomes ludicrous. Because even if someone like RFK gets in, there's not enough of the people in the lower structure to support the change. Yeah. Because there's too much, like this whole idea that he's going to now come aboard. Here's my thing. Some of Kennedy's claims, I'm going to repeal and do the tax code. No, you're not. You're on the unilateral power. It's just as bad as Biden saying, when I get in, I'm reinstating Roe versus Wade. You don't have the power to do that. You're pandering to your base, which goes back to my comment, which is a lot of people just want, oh yeah, I want to vote for him because he's good and he's going to take care of the disadvantaged groups. And it's like, no, man, like, I don't really care what this guy said about grab him in the pussy. I don't really care what this guy, if he voted this way or that way. Like, is he competent? Is he, maybe the nicest guy isn't the best guy to run the country.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't need the nicest, most congenial guy. I want the guy who's going to be very independent and who's going to make the right decisions. But the other issue is that there's no one guy getting in vote or one woman voting into that office from the outside that has anywhere near the lower establishment, because we don't vote in those elections. And I think that really would also speak, if I wanted to be cynical about your friend's story. Well, maybe he just had a bad day. He was pissed off. It's like, oh, you know what? If I had to argue on his side, are you voting in all the small little, like, are you building and voting all the way through? Like, that's like trying to, that's like you saying, hey, every 4 years I'm going to draft an all-star first round draft pick quarterback, but screw an offensive line, screw a defensive line. Hey, we don't even need a kicker, right? It's like, if you don't have that foundation, don't think you're going to bring in the all-star quarterback and you're winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I really feel like that's where we lose it on the voting side. And then, so as we wrap up, let's go under the assumption if one new person was voted into the office, they could effectuate the change, right? And RFK is the strongest candidate. What would motivate Brian to say, you know what, I'm going to pay attention to this candidate and I'm going to take the time to listen and I'm going to take time to vote, because we're going under the premise that if he were voted, he could change things. What would motivate someone like you to feel more empowered or feel it mattered to come out and vote for somebody like maybe Kennedy?
Yeah, RFK knocked my door and be like, what are you doing November 2nd?
Talk about selfish narcissism.
RFK,
the next president, gives me personal attention and he does a pull-up competition with me.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. It doesn't make sense for me to, like, I don't get it. Like, if I show up and I vote, or if I don't vote, is the election going to be any different? Is the outcome going to be any different? I don't see.
Well, I'm going to give you those.
Why would I waste a few hours taking off work, taking away from my business?
Totally agree. Let's go into then. Just play with me the willing suspension of disbelief that the two premises are truthful. One, if he's elected, he can make the change. And two, the vote matters, right? The vote matters. What would motivate you? Because what I'm trying to get at is there's a lot of people on the fence that I try to encourage to be more involved in local votes and stuff like that. And again, that happened because I didn't pay attention and I was almost screwed in my custody case. So it took me learning, oh my God, right? Like, so when I talk to people and I try and help them in those scenarios, I always try to say, like, listen, be more attentive of what's going, especially if you're a parent. You need to be more attentive of Board of Ed and those type of things. Like my son's school was a complete disaster last year. Yeah. They wanted up bringing in this is make you laugh ass. I believe she's Dominican, but she's Latina from Jersey City. when I tell you that school is cleaned up, it is cleaned up. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's like, no joke, it went right. So like what? So like I say, you can effectuate change. A lot of people spoke out at the old structure. I was one of them. But anyway, so I'm trying to think. I always try to motivate people. So assuming it would vote would count, and assuming he could make the change, what is the trigger for you that would be like, you know what, this is a topic that matters, or if he could do this, like, is there anything that would move you to take your day out and risk the vote if it didn't?
I can't think of anything.
You're horrible. You have no empathy.
It's like a good friend of mine is like, hey, do me, let's go out.
Do me a favor. I can take a bribe. Oh my God.
Like,
yo, if you threw me a 50, I could probably free up my day.
But I don't see it. No one's ever convinced me that my vote matters. What would take it? What like so that becomes like, so this is why I like to get people that have different opinions and stuff together. I want to do maybe more. If it would be like,
what would make you like, what would be like, man, that this is what I would need to see, right? Yeah. Like, right? Like, this is like, you're as a coach, you're like, this is what I need to see from you as a client if we're going to work together, right? You got to be open-minded. You got to be like, what would it take? What would be like, even if it's as crazy as, well, he'd have to ensure that all food coming in the U.S. is organic. Like, even if it's crazy like that, is there anything that's a hot button for you that'd be like, you know what, that would drive me to go out and get involved and vote?
Maybe if they banned glyphosate, GMO'd foods.
Like, if you really took a stance on
listen, if I get in the office, like, glyphosate is gone, fertilizer, rodenticides, herbicides, fungicides, they're all gone. We're gonna change up the farming system. We're gonna, I'm going to crack down on pharmaceutical companies. We're going to teach more of a holistic approach in hospitals. Those are the stuff.
I agree with you. I think something like holistic approach in elementary schools, we talked about this before. I think that we have to, as a society, commit triage and know that we need to start, God, even if you want to call it indoctrination, we need to start positively indoctrinating our kids, because the rest of us are right. Like, we've got to cut this gangrene of bullshit that everyone's raised with from our generations. You just say, hey, we need to start, right? Because the doctor and the hospital systems aren't going to change, bro. Here's the thing. They're never going to change to a more holistic, Hyman's trying to do that with functional medicine.
Yeah.
Right. And he's hit a roadblock where he came in with fire in the Cleveland Clinic, and it's dissipated because until somebody can show you how to make money off of it, the resistance is too high.
If they change the education system, or education system's trash right now.
I agree. And then now you get young doctors coming up being like, you know what? I'm not standing for this anymore.
Yeah.
And no offense to your friend who went to Harvard. I don't want to say Harvard and then left, but we need some more fighters that, instead of kind of going off and be like, hey man, screw this system, it's unfixable, being like, no, I'm coming front and center. Now you pissed me off. Now we're changing the whole system. And let me leave you with this. Have you seen, because we're coming up over an hour, have you seen the Joe Rogan podcast with Terrence Howard and Eric Weinstein?
Yeah.
Weinstein,
yeah.
Did you watch the whole thing?
I saw a bit. I probably watched like 2 hours of it.
I watched the whole thing front to back. I'm about to watch it again. I loved it. Here's why. Okay, so because we don't have time, here's what I saw in it. I saw solutions to a lot of the problems we have in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Not because of what they were really talking about, is because Eric makes this point that people that are in this top echelon need to stop worrying about how much money we're making, about how intelligent we are in power, and start going down to the people that are more autodidactic and not pushing them out of fields of study, but pulling them in and not having egos about it. Yep. And instead of dismissing them to pick one piece of information and flapping them out, to say, let me talk through this discussion. It was very Peter Jordan-esque of, let's have a debate not to win. Let's have a debate to get to the middle ground of what truth is. Mm-hmm. And it was so beautiful, because someone like, I saw so much backlash on some social media where people were like, Eric was saying he was going to smack Terrence. And Eric was like, yeah, he comes off a little pompous and pious.
Yeah.
That guy's brain is, have you ever listened to his podcast, The Portal?
I've listened to a couple. He's been on Joe Rogan like 6 times, I want to say.
Just, if you ever feel like you're smart, if you're like, man, I feel pretty good today. I feel smart.
Listen to that guy. He'll humble you.
Dude, your brain just melts out your ear, but you're still inspired. The way his brain works. So anyway, what I saw there was, if more people at that higher level were like, hey, let me sit down with some of you people that don't have the education. And then what he said to Terrence Howard is, the reason you're getting smoked by our community is that you're not using the right language. You're not playing the game. Let me show you how to play the game. Yeah. So, because we're never going to change it from the outside. You're not, yeah. I was like, you go, because like it was really, I would say this, did you not feel like, even though Eric said he wasn't trying to, that he really exposed Neil deGrasse Tyson as being very pompous?
Oh, I'm not a big fan of him. I can't.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
I'm not a big fan of Neil deGrasse. I just think he's very like arrogant. Have you ever watched the interview with him and Patrick Bet-David? Where they're talking.
No, I did see. So with that guy, I've only seen clips of deGrasse Tyson.
Watch him on Patrick Bet-David, and they're talking about the vaccines. Whether you're pro or not, just listen to it, and he was just mad. He just can't admit at any point that he is wrong.
Yeah.
Or it's his way. The smartest person in the room. It just, to me, it's like, it's just
yeah. And that's what I loved about.
He's a genius, but like you don't respect him.
Yeah, I don't. He starts to crack the thing where it's like, oh, there might be an evil set of narcissistic egomaniacs at the top echelon of everything, because the guy that was in our homeroom, like Terrence Howard said it, he's like, here I am as a young, light-skinned color man with no one that looks like me speaking about these things. Yeah. And, he had a shitty school, right? So here Terrence Howard is like, then to come to find out that, like, he thought he was dismissed by Tyson.
Yeah.
Eric opened up the fight that he was backhand smacking you and making fun of you in intellectual communities, because that whole idea that if you're going to do a peer review is the only way to be taken seriously. We all know in the upper echelons, the peer reviews are all like, everybody jerking everybody off intellectually. Yeah. It's all bullshit. And two, that the peer review did you hear this one in the podcast? Peer reviews didn't become a thing until like 1974. And do you know who made it a thing?
The people, right? Or the people within it? What was it again? I forgot. I remember that. I remember listening to that, but what was it again?
I don't want to end up hung in my shower. Giselle Maxwell's father.
Oh, really?
Bought out, realized that there was only a small amount of peer review companies, and it affected the medical component that he was involved in making money on. So what he did is, instead of buying them, because those were true intellectual institutions that would not take any money or bribes, he was like, oh, I fucking know economics. Yeah. So he opened up like 30 medical journals. He flooded the market so nobody could tell, especially with technology. There's no internet. It was like, you got to get the publication sent to you. Well, now you're getting, instead of one that is credible, you're getting 30, and they all have PhDs and they all have MDs, and right. And they're being funded by Kellogg. And there'd be, at those names, the wealthiest people, right? So like, you really want to start diving into this conspiracy theory of the system being broken. You start going back to the beginning. I will make the argument a lot of those things needed to be done because there's no way economically to build it. But I do also see the other side of it, that is that, man, people fucking took their pound of flesh all the way up.
Yeah.
And it was Giselle Maxwell.
I guess, yeah, something like that, yeah.
Epstein's second-hand woman. It was her father who did that.
Wow.
So and it didn't start to 1974. He goes, so when Tyson is saying, oh, well, this is the way we've been doing it for centuries. He's like, no, we've only been doing this since 74. After that, what you would do is you would do exactly what Terrence did. Plato would go to Aristotle, or so-and-so. Copernicus would go to so-and-so, and then you would be poisoned, or they would all attack. And then he said, and that's what I love what he said to Howard, and we can close on that. He said, listen, and this is to what you said, don't complain about the game. Don't take it personal. They poisoned and killed scientists when they were uprooting conventional theory. Expect to be attacked. But I feel that's wrong. And then he says, Rogan, you're the only platform that allows us to speak. Because Rogan the whole time was like, like I was. They start going into linchpin theory, and it's not 0.00927, it's 0.0088. Ha, gotcha. And Howard's like, and then he's like, yeah, but that's the 0.88 frequency 655. It sounds like, and then Howard's singing, and I'm just like, I give up. This is why I'm not fucking more successful. I'm a moron.
Yeah, he's a genius. It blows my mind that guy can do hustle and flow, and then think that it's not gravity. There's no such thing as gravity. It's electrical, waves.
and he's on the doorstep of kind of proving it. Do you know what I mean? Like
why a lot of people are shutting it down. He's trying to. He's not even like adding things to science. He's like, boom, fucking.
Well, that's what he did. He uprooted. He's uprooted. And what Eric is trying to say is, hey, listen, don't try to go for this big bang that you've uprooted. Just he goes, if the worst thing that happens, he's like, he goes, it's more important of what your contribution does than the recognition. So he goes, I don't care about the patents, but the one white thing he had that he said could be like a new type of motion for drones. Because if this is something that changes everybody's life for the rest of the thing, he's like, it's as important as the light bulb, but it's not that you had to reinvent electricity. Yeah. Right. So he's like, he goes, they called it a beautiful mistake. It was I love Eric.
He was very mature and very like, you could tell he's very sincere in trying to, in his,
but he's also a little gangster. He's like, you keep saying that I want to smack you. Yeah. But that's where like Rogan, I felt the only thing I felt Rogan did a bad job was Rogan should have communicated better between the two of them, from the street guy to the high level intellectual guy that Terrence could not figure out for 3 hours how he was teaching. Cause it's like, stop explaining. Just all Eric was trying to say, and Eric couldn't layman terms it down to say, hey, listen, you just got to sell this, but instead of saying, hey, let me show you this, say, what do you think of this? Where do you see the error in this? If you just placated the ego of the intellectuals, Eric's like, you would get more from them. But by you saying 1 + 1 doesn't equal, or 1 × 1 doesn't equal 1, he goes, you immediately are you're losing everyone. So just stop. What is your goal? Do you want everyone to learn this? He goes, well, I want to give everyone a tool. And he goes, stop saying that. By you saying that, you're saying we've all haven't figured this out. I just thought it was a beautiful exchange. And it shows you the diversity of education from the autodidactic, where, people in our space we get shit on by doctors or therapists, or even the guy, Shervin.
Shervin, maybe.
Symbiotica, the guy behind Symbiotica.
Oh, vaguely. Yeah.
Shervin, he had a post that was like, and maybe you took it for somebody else, but it was like, you talk about, you give somebody something that has been around for 3,000 years and completely natural, and they want to pull up every study and they want all scientific backing. Tell them you developed a scientific drug in 6 months and they'll happily take it. Like, that's how distorted we've become as a society right? But again, I wrote a couple notes because there's some rabbit holes I wanted to go down. So unless Robert F. Kennedy knocks on your door and does a pull-up challenge with you, you're not going to be voting, huh?
We'll yeah. Staying clear this one.
All right, man. I always appreciate it, as always. Again, I'm going to ask you a question offline real quick, because we got to let this pull up. But I appreciate you. And then I have a bunch of things I want to go over later. But all right, I'm going to end the recording to everybody out there, so we're under 90 minutes. All right. And thank you, man. Dude, safe trip. Next time we talk, you'll be
in a cave. Well, I'll be back. I'll be back from Vietnam.
Will you? You're gonna be back by next week?
No, I'll be back. So I'll be back to the 29th.
Yeah, you'll be on. Yeah. All right. So a couple weeks. All right, my friend. All right. Enjoy.
All right, man.
All right,
Later.
Bye.